Hey guys, welcome back. It's RK here, and today we're going to look at what makes the top 1% of people so successful. As humans, we always want to be better. We want to always improve. There's always that element of being better than you are yesterday. And when January comes, and January has now passed, everybody's like, I'm going to do X, Y, and Z by, the end of this year. I'm going to do X, Y, and Z by the end of this month. And every single time January comes, there gets to a point where people just fall off. And there are certain habits that really successful people really do all the time to become the top 1%. And I'm sure it's not just purely by luck, because even if you are lucky, to sustain and to maintain a level of success requires you to have specific habits. So in this video, I'm going to go through the top key habits, the attributes to people's success. And we're going to look at some of the most successful people in the world and exactly understand what makes them successful. Let's get started. So the first one is network. Your network is your net worth. But more importantly, Jim Rohn basically said that you are the average of 5 people you spend most of your time with. And he could not be absolutely correct. People we surround ourselves with basically set the baseline for who we are going to be. And I remember when I was studying economics at university and we had group work, and there were times when you had to team up with people. And I really noticed that there were people that were extremely studious, those that were always on time, right at the front of the lecturing room. They were always the people that had all the answers, and they always did really well. They were the 80 percentiles, I would call it, people. And then you had in the same classroom a spectrum of people that just got along. They did all right, but they just got along. But when it came to group work and selectively bringing together people to do a piece of work together, because your scores collectively would come as one score, I noticed how those that were just plodding along always found a way to network their way in to speaking to those who were extremely ethical in terms of, or extremely had a good work ethic, should I say, in what they were doing. And they somehow networked their way and ended up being in those people's groups. So the top 80% would then be mingling and working with alongside some people who just got along. But naturally what tended to happen in that case, because the others who just got along were in the same vicinity, working with them day in and day out, technically their scores actually became the 80 percentile of that group work. And that's when I started to understand how powerful your network can actually be. And there was a study done by Hans George and Klaus Moser, and he talks about the effective networking and how that can attribute to career success. And he can't be absolutely bang on, because he talks about how your networking behaviors contribute to salary growth. He also talks about the fact that networking can contribute to an investment into your future. And more importantly, by networking, you're pretty much that person that will be subject to extreme success. And the study really talks about the vicinity of being in certain places, the networking you are in. And if I take me back to my university days, I remember very, very well that those people who mingled and worked with those who were, the most studious, and those who really got down into the details of work and had a work ethics about them, naturally took on that work ethics because they're working as a group, but also benefited from their success. So I'll highly say that one of the things that I definitely see in successful people is their network. And I ask you, how many people around you are doing the things that you want to do in the future? Is it time to possibly rejig your network? Is it time to possibly start going out to networking and meeting new people? Network is very, very powerful. And it can be one of the most powerful things, even greater than just the financial situation or your finances of where you are. So check out network. The second thing is failing fast. And the world as we have it has this way of wanting to hold on to something. Is it like, I remember when I was growing up and I was working on certain projects and working on certain investments, and I would put so much time and so much effort into it. And even when it was failing, I would still put more effort and more time into it. But actually what I was suffering from was a term, what I would call sunk cost fallacy. And it's that reluctantness or not wanting to abandon a project due to invested efforts. And I'm sure we've all done this, where we've put so much effort into something and really wanting to be successful, and therefore we're just continuously putting more time and more effort and more finances into it. But actually how we should look at it is this is just one extra way that shows me how not to do it. So perhaps maybe I need to end the project and move on to something else, or maybe reevaluate how I can do it better. And there's an amazing book by John Maxwell called Failing Forward. And he looks at failure very, very differently. He looks at it as actually failure is the opposite of not doing something the way it should be done. So he sees it as failure is not necessarily the opposite of success, but it's a process we take to identifying the path to success. And when we look at failure like that, it allows us to let go, break the shackles of things that are not working and move on quickly. And successful people know this very, very well. It gives you an opportunity to also start lean and gain feedback and refine. Because by actually saying, right, I'm only going to dedicate a couple of months to this project and this is going to be the end date. If it doesn't work out by this date, maybe I might need to move on, or maybe I might need to reevaluate. And that is really true of highly successful people. And one person who is absolutely a pillar of an example of failing fast or failing forward or failing quickly and getting on with it is Richard Branson. And Richard Branson is a pioneer of pivoting. When he was younger, he started a magazine line, student magazine line, and that didn't work out, and he struggled to make it lift off the ground. He then moved on to building what we now know it as, Virgin Records, but that was a mailing order service. Didn't work out and moved on. He then moved on to expanding into airlines, and we now have Virgin Atlantic. And I can't say that if Richard Branson hadn't failed fast quickly, realized that actually maybe the student magazine wasn't working for him, mail orders weren't the way forward, but actually Virgin Atlantic was his thing, he might not have had an opportunity and the time to actually invest his resources into Virgin Atlantic. So I actually ask you, what are the things that you're working on that you might be actually just failing forward, but you're actually not realizing that it's time to pivot and change? And Richard Branson is an exceptional example of how to fail fast quickly and move on. The next one up is rejection and the ability to embrace rejection. How I like to say is, if one door closes, another one will surely open. And I remember when I started my career in the IT space, there was a lot of opportunities that I had got rejected from. And I quickly learned that actually those rejections were just another opportunity for me to try again. And the actual term rejection is not as bad as it sounds. If you Google the word rejection, it actually says the dismissing or refusing of a proposal or idea. So it's not necessarily saying it's never going to happen. It's just, it's not happening right now. It's someone rejecting the idea or concept you bring to the table right now. And J.K. Rowling was a very good example of this, where she was literally going from publishing house to publishing house and had numerous rejections. But had she stopped at maybe the last rejection before her major break, she might not have discovered the ability to actually publish what we now know as Harry Potter. Walt Disney, he got fired from his first job, in animations job, and that was in 1919. But almost 4 years later, in 1923, he discovered Walt Disney as you know it today. And again, these are ideas of who have got rejected, got fired, had a bad fall, not necessarily going in the right direction, but they've embraced rejection and still followed their pathway, but just in a different light. And embracing rejection, I think, is one of the most successful things you can actually do, because with success will come failures, and with failures come rejection. And it's okay to be rejected. It just means that the idea you're bringing to the table right now, maybe in this avenue, doesn't work. But it also doesn't mean that it doesn't work forever. It might just mean where you're marketing or where you are trying to build from, that community doesn't really appreciate the idea or want the idea. So embracing rejection is one of the most powerful things you can do. It builds you a backbone and enables you to just plow on even after rejection and move forward to the next best thing. Now, the fourth one is effective time management. Now, successful people know how to manage their time. If there's anything they can do really well, is managing their time, because they know time is money. And Henry David says, in short, that it is not enough to be busy. The question is, what are we busy about? And when you understand that time is a commodity, time is really the reward for spending it right. If you spend your time well, it is really can be rewarding. If you spend your time badly, it can be extremely costly. And successful people know how to manage their time, but more importantly, they compartmentalize time in a way that is to a purpose. So I challenge you, what is it that you spend most of your time on that actually could be reallocated to actually your purpose? Successful people know that actually, if I'm working an 8-hour day or 5-hour day, that is the only time I should really be focused on productive work. And if you literally spend enough time on it, you will be successful. But actually, if we go back to the point about what are you spending your time on, if you give yourself a deadline that you need to complete something in 1 month, most likely you end up finding time to shuffle around and waste a couple of weeks just doing maybe the bare minimum. But if you give yourself tight deadlines, maybe I'm only going to focus on this for 2 weeks and deliverable is in 2 weeks, your mindset will slightly shift and you'll reprioritize and focus on what is absolutely important. So effective time management is absolutely key to being successful. And I definitely think top 1% people definitely look at effective time management as a source to their success. And number 5 is pretty much tunnel vision. When successful people want to be successful, they have tunnel vision. And the analogy I like to give is, imagine yourself, you are driving on a motorway, 70 miles per hour. Most likely, the most you can do is check your mirrors frequently, and that's most you can do. You're never going to have the opportunity driving at 70 miles per hour at safety, with safety in mind, looking absolute left and absolute right for even up to 30 seconds or even a minute, because most likely what's going to happen, you'll crash. And that is one of the things that successful people know how to do, is they are tunnel focused. And what that allows you to do is to just ignore distractions. A lot of the time when we've got an idea that we want to deliver, or there's something that we want to achieve, we'll listen to the inner voices. We'll listen to what this person thinks or what the other person thinks. But actually, that shouldn't matter. What you want to achieve should be the only thing that matters. What you want to deliver should be the only thing that you should be focusing on. So tunnel vision is key to be successful. If you don't have tunnel vision, it's very hard for you to focus, and it's also very easy for you to be swayed left and swayed right. There's nothing wrong with pivoting, but tunnel vision is definitely something that successful people literally embrace day in and day out, because with tunnel vision allows you to execute and build goals, build ideas, and actually bring them into fruition. And number 6 is productivity systems. Now, productivity systems are everywhere, and you might not think they are, but let me give you some examples. Now, in today's world, we have our alarms that wake us up. We have calendars that allow us to manage our diaries and schedules. We use GPS to basically provide us directions into our destination. Now, these are all examples of tools that basically help us maintain productivity and achieve our day-to-day goals. Now, successful people also have productivity systems very similar to this to basically track their success. I, for example, use Notion to manage my tasks and my social media content. I also use AI tools for my research for my day-to-day, like ChatGPT, Gemini, DeepSeek. And these are all examples of productivity systems that successful people will potentially use in different aspects of their lives. But definitely one thing you want to consider is, if you want to be successful, it's not just worth saying you want to be successful or writing it down, but also building systems in place that allow you to be successful. So if you're building a business, for example, you can't just build a business just with pen and paper. You need systems in place to manage your customers, clientele, your funneling, your sales, like CRM systems. You'll need a marketing team that will need a marketing program to basically do all their marketing content. And these are key things that basically make companies, but individuals that run these companies, successful. So consider productive systems as basically a process and a tool to maximizing your productivity, but also being extremely successful in the process of it. And my 7th one is the ability to listen. And this one is such a simple thing to implement in your day-to-day world, but very little people actually do this. And successful people understand how important it is to listen, because it's through listening we gain insight and we get feedback. It's very easy for us to want to be heard by people and want to be understood, but how often are we listening to people around us? If you're managing a team, how often are you listening to your team? How often are you listening to your colleagues? How often are you listening to your mentor? Because these could be insights into being a better version of yourself, but also improving on things that you want to improve on around you. So I say if you're not listening, you're probably going in the wrong direction all the time. But if you actually are listening, you could actually be gaining large amounts of feedback. And an opportunity for feedback is great, but if you're not listening, you might actually miss out on an opportunity to actually build something of extra value or improve on that. So guys, that wraps up my top tips for successful habits of the 1%. See you on the next one.